We'll start.
Okay.
Call to attention. So
What happened?
I don't know.
No minion tonight.
That's right. I just thought this week's Parshas EMOR, and before we start that, I just want to go through something, especially for the recording, because this came up from somebody on the recording. Somebody raised the issue with me like this. So everybody here will be able to follow this. He raised this question. We learn when we're learning betochen, right? When we're learning trust, we learn it with certain steps, that Hashem created the world, that He's bringing the world into being every moment, that means that He's controlling everything that's happening. That means that there's Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence on everything that happens to each and every one of us, that it's controlled, that it's deliberate, and therefore, if you believe that enough and you trust in your God enough, because God is all good, if all of that is happening, then in theory, there's no place for worry, there's no place for stress, there's no place for anxiety. Why? Because you trust in your God, and God is controlling everything. And one of the things that is mentioned in Chassidus is that there's no place for disappointment. How can you, logically, how can you be disappointed? What, you know better than God? So, and yet, people do get disappointed, right? So the temptation is to say, well, they haven't learned Chassidus, and if they have learned Chassidus, it's not das with them. Because if it were das with them, if they really understood that Hashem is recreating everything, every moment, and everything that's happening is for the best, and everything's happening to you deliberately, and you wanted a new car and you couldn't get the new car, you wanted a new job, you couldn't get the new job, what's to be disappointed? Only if it's a kind of avodah zarah, that you think you know better than God what's good for you, and therefore you're disappointed. So I was, and that's all true. That's all. That learning is 100% robust and true. However, it's not the whole story. And I feel bad that in the shiurim that we've learned together on betochen, I didn't understand that this piece was missing. But it's a missing piece and it needs to be understood. How was it brought to my attention that the Rebbe used to cry in Fabrengens that we didn't have Mashiach? And the question is, how can the Rebbe cry that we didn't have Mashiach? How can the Rebbe say that he was disappointed that we didn't have Mashiach? Because if the Rebbe knows better than you and me about Hashgacha Pratis and about the fact that Hashem's creating the world and the fact that Hashem is all good and that everything that's happening is happening for a reason and deliberate, etc., etc., and if Hashem has not brought Mashiach yet, he knows what he's doing. So what's to cry about? You hear the question? So what is missing in that explanation is that there is certain energies that are driven by man. And meaning effort, even betochen is an energy driven by man. The more betochen you have, the better a chance you have that the outcome will happen. If Mashiach is to come as a result of our effort. Mashiach can come in one of two ways. He can come because the time's come, 6,000 years, or he can come early if we merit it. There's no question that the Rebbe was not crying about the 6,000 years, because the 6,000 years aren't here yet. It's only 5, 7. So what's he crying about? He's crying that we haven't earned it yet. Now, that's not a matter of betoken in Hashem. That's a matter of disappointment, not in what happens, what's happening to us. That's a matter of disappointment that we are not trying hard enough, that we're not doing enough, that we are not reaching our potential. And there's a saying in the Rebbe was very fond of using this phrase, that nothing stands in the way of Rotzen, in the way of will. So if we wanted it enough, we would have Mashiach. What's the proof that we don't want him enough? That we don't have him. Now, it's not that we don't have him because it's the best thing for everybody, because Hashem is doing everything for the best, and Hashem is bringing. It's because we are lacking, and that is what the rebel is disappointed in. Not in God, not in something where we think we know better. That's not that disappointment is treif. That disappointment's no good, because it's akin to a form of avodah zarah, that we know better. But it's perfectly legitimate for one to say that one is lamenting that one hasn't done enough. I'll give you an example. I used an example when we were learning Betoken together that I used to learn with my grandson when he was in YG. We used to have a Hasidic shir on the phone every Thursday night. And I once said to him, and these kids, when they finished Seder, they used to go to Danieli's, which is a wonderful hamburger joint in Melbourne, and to get a hamburger. So one night they got there and there were no more hamburgers. They ran out of hamburgers. They got too late. They got there too late, I think. They got there too late. And the door was closed. And so, and I said to my grandson, "So were you disappointed?" And he said, "Terribly." I said, "But how can you be disappointed? We've been learning about Betoken for the last 3 weeks. We've been learning that everything Hashem does is for the best. You're not controlling this. Hashem is bringing this to say, how can you be disappointed? That's avodah zarah." So I think I said to you guys that he said, "Come on, Sadie, get real." Now he's wrong. He's wrong. But he is also not wrong. Why is he not wrong? Because if he's disappointed and that prompts him to be there earlier next time so that the shop isn't shut, that he shouldn't be lazy when he's finished the learning and waste 10 minutes of time and saunter down the street instead of walking briskly down the street, then it's a healthy thing to be disappointed. Right? So there is room for disappointment, but that disappointment is not a disappointment in God, it's a disappointment in our effort. So I just thought I'd cover that because it came up this week. And it's also, by Hashgacha Pratis, as it always is, it's relevant to what we're going to learn. So we're going to learn Parshas EMOR. EMOR means to say. And the Parsha, I'll just summarize for you what the Parsha is about. The first part of the Parsha is about the laws of the Kohanim, what their duties were, what their obligations were, who they can marry, under what conditions do they get married, what does the Kohen Gadol have to do, what clothes does he wear, is he allowed to marry, etc. So we're not going to do any of those laws tonight. The second half of the Sedra is all the laws pertaining to Yom Tov. So Pesach through to Shavuos, then Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and all the particulars of that, what we have to do, what laws we have to keep, what are the laws of those various festivals. That on Yom Kippur we fast, etc. On Shavuos we bring a special offering, a korban of bread. We'll come to that in a minute. So that's the background to the Sedra. But one of the things that is mentioned and that we need to learn together, because we haven't yet this year, is that one of those obligations, one of those obligations is Sfiras HaOmer, the counting of the Omer. So let me run you through the halakha of this quickly first. It says that after Shabbos, actually it means the second day of Pesach, on the second day of Pesach, from then we have to count 49 days. By the way, Friday, as we mentioned before, is Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is the 33rd of those 49 days. And we celebrate it for a really deep mystical reason. This is just a detour for a moment. There was a Tana called Reb Shimon ben Yochai, Bar Yochai. So he, as everybody I hope knows, was the author of the Zohar. How did he write the Zohar? When Rome was destroying Jerusalem and the temple, he ran away to a cave with his son, spent 14 years in this cave. They got undressed and covered themselves in sand so that their clothes wouldn't wear out, for 6 days a week. On Shabbos they got up and they got dressed. There was a stream that miraculously ran past their cave, which they washed in and drank from. There was a carob tree miraculously growing outside the cave, which they used for food. And they spent 14 years in this cave learning Torah. Now, they had no materials, so obviously they were reciting Baal Peh off by heart, but not just reciting Baal Peh. They were looking into the deeper levels of it, to the point that he wrote the Zohar, which the word means light. And so he recorded in the Zohar aspects of reality hitherto unknown, unimagined by anybody, and it's very difficult. The Zohar is a very difficult. First of all, the language is very difficult. The concepts are very difficult. Just so that you know, that remained hidden until 600 years ago. There was or no, maybe not 600 years. Maybe it was the 16th century. Yeah, the 16th century. Well, it's almost 600 years ago, where there was a unbelievable genius called the Arizal, and the Arizal founded modern Kabbalah. That means from the Zohar he developed Kabbalah, which in itself is very difficult and has many severe. It's such a power, it's such an energy that it's also very dangerous. And we learn that, and it was forbidden to teach Kabbalah there are a whole lot of restrictions on it. You had to be over 40 to learn it. You had to be married. You have to know the whole Shas. And it couldn't be learned in public. It couldn't be learned with more than one person. So one Rebbe can teach one student, but can't teach a class. No such thing, or two students at once. And the difficulty with it was that people that disobeyed these structures went mad. So it's a very high voltage thing, and but that was the next stage from Reb Shimon Bar Yochai to the Arizal. Then came the Baal Shem Tov 300 years later, and he upped the voltage but increased the safety. So it became possible for the first time in history to learn aspects of Kabbalah, which we now call Hasidus, and Hasidim learn Hasidus, but it's really the province par excellence of Chabad. Chabad are the torch bearers of Hasidus. And this was developed through the Baal Shem Tov and his Hebrew Kadisha. He had a group of very wonderful, outstanding students who, after his death, Mogad of Mezrich took over, and then all the various dynasties, the houses were formed from all the Rebbes who went away to teach Hasidus to Jews all over the world. One of which was the Alter Rebbe, and he started Chabad Hasidus. Now, on Lag BaOmer, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai died, and when he died, because he had found the light that was in the Zohar, and because he was a Novi and a prophet, and he knew that this was going to be picked up by the Arizal, and then by the Baal Shem Tov, and then by the Mogad, and then by the various Rebbeim, until Mashiach is precipitated, which is any minute, according to the Rebbes, whether you see it or not, I see it or not. Because of that, he asked Am Yisrael in all the generations to follow until Mashiach comes, to celebrate that day as a day of Simcha. And that's why Lag BaOmer is a very happy festival. But it's not a Yontif. We work on Lag BaOmer. There are no restrictions of Yom Tov or Shabbos, but it's a very happy day. How you make one day happier than another day is another shir. We've had it before. We'll no doubt do it again. But it's not by partaking of more pleasure. It's by increasing the volume knob on various spiritual focuses. So that's Lag BaOmer. That's on Friday, and this is one of the four. So let's go back to it. Huh?
Lag BaOmer last week.
This week. This week.
17th.
Thursday night, Friday.
That would be 36 days. I don't know how you calculate.
33rd day.
On calendar.
He's a man who returns foreign. There's not very many of you around. I tell you, I have to say shkach to that. So, but Lag BaOmer is one of the 49 days. So now let's talk about the 49 days. We are in a period called Sfiras HaOmer, which is 49. We are told we have an obligation to count 49 days, and then 49 days from Yetzias Mitzrayim, actually from the second day Pesach, and we count those 49 days, and after the 49 days, on the 50th day, we have Shavuos. Now, the first thing that you need to know about this counting is why is it necessary? So there are some commentators that remark on the history of it, that Jews were told when they escaped Mitzrayim, at a physical level, when they escaped the bondage of Mitzrayim, that in 49 days in 50 days they'll get the Torah. What's the Torah? The Torah is the wisdom of Hashem, and it's going to be a roadmap and a blueprint for Am Yisrael from then till Mashiach. So everybody was very excited, and therefore they counted down the days. You know how kids say it's only 3 sleeps to my birthday, 2 sleeps to my birthday. So they counted 49 days. All Torah is true, and there are no contradictions. So that's probably correct. I shouldn't say probably. That is correct as well, because the Talmud says that. The problem with that is it's really counting it in the wrong order, right? I mean, you'd think that if you were counting for that reason, you'd start with 50, 49, 48. There's only so many sleeps to go, right? But that has nothing to do with how we learn. How we learn is this, that we learn that Am Yisrael could not have stayed in Mitzrayim another minute. That the place was so filthy dirty, spiritually filthy dirty, that their bodies were so contaminated by the lack of morality or the immorality, by the licentiousness, by the debauchery, by the lack of boundaries, brothers sleeping with sisters, children sleeping with their parents. The whole way of life was a life of no boundaries. The whole woke movement, had nothing on them. There were just simply no boundaries, and that was very, and they were very vergrobbed, very sunken in this filth. Came Hashem and worked a miracle and schlepped them out of that bondage, schlepped them out of Mitzrayim, is Loshen Meitzah, which means restriction. And we learn a fascinating thing in Kabbalah and in Chassidus. And you need to take this on board, because this becomes part of your own life adjustment and wisdom that we learn. Only the neshama came out. Only the neshama ran away, leaving the guf vergrobbed in all of what it was used to. They were used to. You like the look of XYZ, you continued to like the look of XYZ. You wanted to perform an act of immorality. You can still continue to want to do it. Your animal soul was completely megushem in Mitzrayim, completely sunken into the habits of life of Mitzrayim. So what did Hashem take out? Hashem took out the neshama. And what was the purpose of that? The purpose of that was to give Am Yisrael the Torah. So if the purpose of that was to give Am Yisrael the Torah, Hashem says, okay, the neshama, which, let's understand, cannot be vergrobbed. It cannot be sunken. It can't be stained. Why? Because it's a Helek Eloka Mimal. It's a part of God Himself, and therefore, and it's not part of creation. Let's not make this mistake. The neshama is not created. Neshama is part of God. So, man is created, animals are created, the world is created, Gashmias is created, but the neshama is not created. The neshama is part of God, which spends a period of time in a guf. It existed before the Guf and it'll exist after the Guf. So, but the body and the neshama being unstained is okay for Matan Torah. It's okay to witness a Gilui Elokus and a revelation of godliness so that Am Yisrael should have the Torah. But their bodies weren't. And Hashem said, sorry, you're not fit to come here and hear this. You're not fit to come here and see the lightning, see the thunder and hear the lightning. That's the wording you'll see when we do it in the next week or two, that the words used is to see the thunder and hear the lightning. And there's a whole lot of emphasis on that. What does that mean? It should be the other way around. But it was the interplay of both realities at the same time. And that's one of the miracles of Shavuos, that there is this interplay of both realities, of the spiritual and the physical at the same time. But in order to do that, the body, that doesn't mean the outside of the body, it means the nefesh abahamis, the animal soul, has to be refined to a level where it is able to receive the voltage of Matan Torah. And that happens through Sfiras HaOmer. Sfiras HaOmer is a counting of the week. Let me take a detour. We all know, because we've learned it together many times, I'm saying this for the tape as well, that there are, when it says that man is created in the image of God, what does that mean? God hasn't got a body, so God doesn't have an image. So what does it mean that we are created in the image of God? So it's answered in Kabbalah and in Chassidus that as Hashem has 10 spheres, what are called spheres, which I'll define in a second, which many of you know, so too man has 10 spheres. What are the 10 spheres? There are 3 intellectual ones, Chokmah, Binah, and Das, and there are 7 emotional ones, Hesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, etc. Now, those emotional ones are different. We are hardwired. Every one of us is hardwired with our own specific interplay of combination of those 7 emotional parts to our animal soul, nefesh habahamis. And what the period of Sphira is designed to do, and I don't think anybody should beat themselves up too much if they're not up to this, but you need to know where the goalposts are, is that because there are 7 levels of emotion, and there are 7 weeks between Pesach and Shavuos, each one of those 7 emotions needs to be paired with each one of the other ones. So 7 sevens are 49, and therefore that counting, in inverted commas, is not only the number of counting of days, but the refinement of each single emotion with each of the other emotions. Until the whole job is finished, that on the 49th day, the job is finished, and we have the 50th day, which is Shavuos. And on that day, the risk of falling back into Mitzrayim disappeared, because there was an exposure to Atzmos, the essence of godliness, and that exposure to the essence of godliness is what's kept Am Yisrael high ever since. So, and there are some strange things about this 49 days and the counting of it. For example, And by the way, in the second half of this Parsha, where it goes through all the Yom Tovim and the laws for the Yom Tovim, everyone gets a date. Pesach is the 14th of Nisan, and Tishrei is the first, and Rosh Hashanah is the 1st of Tishrei, and Yom Kippur is the 10th of, and everyone has a date. The only one that doesn't have a date is Shavuos. Shavuos has no date. The date for Shavuos is 50 days after you begin counting after Pesach. And this is very important in halakha. I'll just take this as a quick detour. This isn't a halakha shir, but I'll give you an example of where it can be very important. Let's say yesterday was the 30th. Right? Let's say that yesterday someone gets on a plane from New York to come to Sydney. If he gets on a plane to come to Sydney, you know that he gains a day. Correct? Everybody knows that. So what happens? He's on the plane. He leaves on the 30th. What day does he count on the 30th? The 30. But he misses out 31. So when he gets to Sydney, everybody's counting 32. He can't count 32 because he hasn't had 31. So he has to count 32 as 31. Do you understand this? So what happens is that when he gets to Shavuos, which is 50 days for him, it's the day after. And that happened to us. You know, we were in Melbourne once. Just tell you this as a matter of fact, and some friends of ours ring us up and say, would you like to come for lunch? And it was, I can't remember, it was a Monday or a Tuesday. And we expressed some surprise, and they said, yeah, let me explain, you know, for us, this was the day after Shavuos. They explained they came back from America and they had to count. So for them, it was Shavuos, and they were inviting us to a Yontif meal. They understood that we wouldn't be making Kiddush, that we wouldn't be dressed up, but they needed a Yontif meal, and they needed to have company. So they invited 10, 12 couples, and we had this huge table. We had this huge Yontif meal where he was in a kapota and she was all dressed up, and everybody else was in because for everybody else it wasn't. So for that reason, by the way, the Rebbe was very keen that people didn't do that didn't cross the date line, and instead went round the other way. And if you go around the other way, you don't, cross the date line. You don't lose the day. So that's right. So anyway, that's.
I'll tell you about my conversation with Rabbi Sachs afterwards.
Okay. So but the 49 days is a matter of combining each midah with each other midah. And why is it that the neshama had to be schlepped out of there? And it says it fled. And when in the Haggadah it says that, but we explain it in Chassidus that it was only the neshama that fled and left the nefesh habahamis behind to catch up through the 49 days. So I had a very good moshel for this. You know, lately, Nebok, it's become very common, particularly in America. It's coming here, but it's much more in America, that rabbis and psychiatrists are pooling resources with kids on drugs. I don't know if you know this. That kids on drugs, I'm talking about kids from frum homes, frum kids who become drug addicts. and they found that these kids are the most sensitive kids of the family. Then, not the, instead of thinking they're the bad kids in the family, there's a realization that they actually their waters run deeper. They have they're much more sensitive, and they have difficulty dealing with reality, and that's why they try to dumb it down. And a great deal of progress has been made with Hasidus coupled with therapies. Anyway, enough. I'm just telling you this as background. So one of the things that they found is that, so you take a situation where a rabbi goes into a place to rescue a kid. His parents have begged him to, or whatever it is. So he goes in there, and all the kids are shooting up heroin or doing whatever it is that they do. Baruch Hashem, I don't have experience, but and this rabbi, let's pretend, gets through to the kid, gets through to him and explains to him that this is not a life. Bad choice, wrong direction, won't work, no future. And let's say he gets through to it, which is rare, but let's say he does. And let's say the kid's convinced, and the kid resolves to get rid of it. Stop. The first thing that the rabbi has to do is to tell the kid to run from that place and those friends and have nothing to do with them again. Because the moment he stays there, sooner or later, he's going to slide back into the problem. If he mixes with those people, same thing. He's going to... The first thing he's got to do is run away from that environment. So that's the moshel of the neshama running away, leaving. That's right. Now then, the kid's got to go to work. Just running away isn't going to do it on its own. Every day he's going to have the temptation. Every day he's going to have the problem. He's going to have the anxiety or the stress that made him go to it in the first place. So he's got to deal with that, and that's a process of hard work. So that's what the 49 days is. And then he has a chance to find his own life and his own paradise in his own relationship with his God. And that is after that process of building. So that dynamic of the spheres of Omer, of the counting of it, is not just that we count the number of days or that we perform a mitzvah blindly, not understanding what's going on. What we're doing is we are saying we're leaving one level of life behind, whatever that level is in each and every year, and we are trying to elevate our own life into a higher value system, so that when we come to stand in front of our God on Shavuos on the 50th day, when we are going to reaffirm the fact that we have the koyach to bring ruchnius into gashmius, spirituality into physicality, and to elevate physicality into spirituality, that we will be further strengthened and empowered to do that as a result of our effort. So this business of serious this business of serious, page 2. Look at the card. And it's very interesting that the process begins with an offering, with a korban. And that korban is made of barley, not wheat. The non-animal offerings, that were not wine but food, were various forms of cakes, pastries, whatever. I'm no cook, but the korban that begins Spheris Omer, which is waving this Omer, which is a certain measure of this grain. The grain is barley. Why is it barley? Because barley is animal fodder. That's what you feed animals. People don't eat barley. The animals eat barley. That offering is brought as soon as we leave Mitzrayim, because it's a general statement that we are going to work with ourselves, with our animal soul, to elevate and refine the animal soul so that we are fit and proper vehicles to receive the godliness that we're going to receive on the revealed godliness that we get on Shavuos. Now, that's the general reason we bring the offering. But the particular process is one of combining each midah with each midah. So let me give you a couple of simple examples so that you get what we're talking about. Let's just talk about Chesed and Gevurah, because everybody knows Chesed and Gevurah, they're the first of the two emotions, they're supposedly opposites. So the first day that you count the Omer is Chesed Sheba Chesed. Chesed that's in Chesed. For example, you have a child, a grandchild, and you find the child doing something wonderful. He's being kind to his sister or his brother, or shares his toys nicely. Or he does something that is difficult for a kid to do, a good thing. So you reward him with ice cream. You buy him a big ice cream and you bring him the big ice cream, and his face is, he loves it. This is an example of Chesed Sheba Chesed. You want to do good for him. You do good for him. The good is open and revealed. He feels the good. It's good in good, right? But there are times when you catch your child doing something wrong. And it's a matter of chinuch, it's a matter of education. You have to punish him. So you punish the kid. Now, you don't punish the kid because you hate him. You punish the kid because you love him. But that love has to be in a way of gevurah, not in a way of chesed. Because if you try and if you buy him an ice cream, it's not going to help. So this is gevurah sheba chesed. That's the second way. Then there's, let's do gevurah. You have gevurah sheba gevurah. That's where you have a terrorist who's coming to murder your family, and you take a gun and kill him. You're under no illusions. Shalom Aleichem. You want to look higher? We have Syria here.
Yeah.
Too. Please sit down and say l'chaim. So you have Gevurah Sheba Gevurah l'chaim, where you have a terrorist. You hate the terrorist, and you're going to shoot him. That's Gevurah Sheba Gevurah. But then you have Gevurah Sheba Chesed Sheba Gevurah, where what's the name of the guy who used to run the PLO?
Arafat.
Yeah, Arafat. So Arafat smiles and shakes Rabin's hand, right? Is anyone fooled? We think that he loves him. There's no love there. It's real gevurah, but it's hidden in with a phony chesed. So the whole business of Spheris Omer is combining each of those 7 midos with each of the other 7 midos, and going through a process of purification of all of those things. Now, the Rebbe explains an amazing thing. He explains that really there are 4 levels to this, and these 4 levels are available in in an analysis of one's own reality, of one's own personal development for himself and his family, and the whole business of making a derivat haftoinik. So, Rebbe takes us through this period of Sfiras HaOmer with chametz as the moshel, as the example. 7 days we can't eat chametz. 7 days of Pesach we can't eat chametz, we can't have any chametz, we can't have anything to do with chametz. And even the matzah that we eat for those 7 days, Chabad is very careful not to, for example, put stuff on the matzah. Why? Because there's a concern in case maybe there was a couple of bits of flour left over and somehow or other they'll get wet and somehow or other there'll be some ability for it to rise. So, for example, for the first 7 days, we in Chabad don't eat gebroks. I don't know whether you guys, maybe you do. Gebroks? No. So we don't either. So what does gebroks mean? Wetting the matzah in, dipping in the soup. However, on Achron Shel Pesach, we are dafka very particular to be certain to make gebroks, to dip our matzah in the chicken soup or in the whatever liquid it is, and make sure that we have gebroks. That means it's still not chametz, but it's matzah which is where the risk, the worry, the concern that it might be, that there might be something there which could become leavened disappears. And then you have a period of time when between Achron Shel Pesach and Shavuos, when you don't have to have matzah. You can eat chametz. But it's not compulsory. If you want to keep eating matzah, you can. But when it comes Shavuos, we have an obligation, not today, but in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, to bring a korban which was made dafka of wheat, dafka of chametz. We had to bring the chametz. So Rebbe explains, what's this dynamic about in terms of you and me? So he explains this. He says that there's a period of time when once a year you have to stand in front of your God and have no yeshus, no ego. Clean out all the ego, absolutely nothing, to the point that you're absolute matzah, without any chance of there being any ego. Achron Shel Pesach, we relax that. We relax that to the extent that we recognize that it may be a necessity. Don't forget that chametz is also part of Gashmis. It's also part of Sheishis Yimei Bereshis. It's also part of Hashem's world. It's also part of Gashmis. Also good, because all Gashmis is good ultimately. Then we spend a period of time when we can eat matzah, or we can eat chametz. How do you know? This explains to Rebbe, this is your decision. You've got to decide, was the 7 days and the 1 day a sufficient healing process for you or not? You know where you stand. It's not a matter of somebody else passing judgment. They wouldn't know. The only person that knows is you and God. You know where you stand with your God, and God knows where you stand. But when it comes time for Shavuos, when it gets time for our obligation that we take on, that we are empowered by Hashem to elevate Gashmias into Ruchnias and bring Ruchnias down into Gashmias, which is what is the whole purpose of making a Dira B'Taktoinim, the whole blueprint of that, then we must be involved in Gashmias, because the whole game is to elevate Gashmias. So therefore, we have to have the bread. Therefore, we have to have chametz. And if you want to know what the positive of chametz is, because there's good in everything, right? So we learn that spiritual progress is made by looking for bittul, looking for lack of yeshus, looking for lack of ego, looking for trying to do things for other people, not to gratify oneself. But there are times when you need some arrogance. There's some, the Gemara says a Talmud Chacham has an eighth of gaiva. You need some gaiva. You know when? I'll tell you when. When I have a client in the mortgage fund. He's telling me his son, this is a Gentile, told me his son is a lecturer at Sydney University, and they make the Palestinian lobby is making life so difficult for anyone that believes in Israel, and there are times when you need people to stand up to these people. You need a Jew to stand up in his yarmulke with his tzitzis and take a stance and say no to these people. You need that. So the transition from personal escape from Mitzrayim, from personal freedom from the Megushim state that the 49th level of Tumah was in Mitzrayim, that has to begin with you. That has to begin with running away from the evil, running away from the drugs, if in the mashal that we were using with the kids on the drugs, and leaving it behind. But then there's a period of refinement, and you have to become worthy of the Gilui Elokus that takes place on Shavuos. And then in order to be worthy of that, there has to be a recognition that there is place for chametz. There is place for chametz. Not only is there place for chametz, but the korban that we have to bring, Shavuos, is dafka made from bread. Is dafka made from chametz. Okay. We've run out of time, and I'm only halfway through the sikha, but let me finish with this. We started at the beginning of this year with the issue of disappointment and emunah. That if you believe that there is God and that Hashem is creating the world and He's creating it every moment, and everything that He's creating every moment is for good. And therefore, the fact that He's creating it every moment means that He's controlling everything. And that if He's controlling everything that's happening to you is for the good. So there's no room for anxiety, there's no room for fear, there's no room for worry. And then we said, but what about the fact that the Rebbe cried that we don't have Mashiach? If you say there's no room for disappointment, how could the Rebbe be disappointed that we didn't have Mashiach? Surely Hashem must know better. If Hashem knows better, then why was the Rebbe crying that we don't have Mashiach? And the answer to that, I explained to you, was that the Rebbe was not crying on God, the Rebbe was crying on us, that we haven't done enough to merit that Hashem can precipitate Mashiach. And that crying is a call to action for us. So this is actually the same dynamic. At the beginning of the period of Sfiras HaOmer, at the beginning when we start counting. We've just have a Yetzias Mitzrayim. Then there is one level of vision. But with the process of working on oneself, one gets to a point where the whole thing isn't what Hashem is putting in front of us, but what we are doing to generate the environment, the spiritual environment for our success in making a derivat Hakdolim. And that is Jewish greatness. Not being on the cover of Time magazine or getting to Rookwood with the most toys. Jewish greatness is taking the Hashgacha Pratis that you're given, taking your Nefesh Habahamis, working with all those levels of chometz to make it bittul, to bring back some level of chometz, so that you can then spend your life in the worthwhile business of elevating your Nefesh Habahamis, your family, and the world. And that's what Jews do. That's what we have to do. Salachaim l'chaim.
לא, לא, לא.